Champ Week
Let's
live,
go.
presented by Principal. That's Sam Ravech. I'm Christine Williamson. How you feeling?
Feeling great. This is like Christmas Day for all of us that love college basketball because we're gearing up for Selection Sunday tomorrow. A lot of conference champions getting crowned. This is like the best time of year in college basketball, aside from like the first day of games in March Madness.
Yeah, but like the first day of games in March Madness, I feel like is the pinnacle. So leading up into that, you get all the good, you get like the juices flowing when it comes to the tournament matchups and conference championships. You get to see whether or not people are going to shake it up. And in that same vein, we're going to talk about some things that we've seen this champ weekend because we love to see it. We love when people shake it up a little bit. So we start with Penn State reaching the Big Ten Finals with a win over number 19 Indiana. So the Nittany Lions went 8 for 23 from the three-pointer compared to 2 for 14 for the Hoosiers. What the heck happened to Indiana in this matchup?
Indiana just has kind of had up and down times. Sometimes they struggle to score this season as well. We've seen that. Trace Jackson-Davis had a good game, but it's just nobody else that was able to really help him out. Penn State has been an incredible story the last couple of weeks. Jalen Pickett joined the 1,000-point club earlier today, in his 65th game as a Nittany Lion as well. It's been impressive to watch what he's done. Yeah, first Big 12, Big 10 championship game since 2011. Also the last time they were in the NCAA tournament.
All right, Vandy upset Kentucky, which was huge, 80-73 the final. That's the second time that they beat UK in the last 10 days, which is huge for them, right?
Immense, but it might be a little too late for Jerry Stackhouse and company. 79th in Ken Palm, 79th in the net. I don't know if it's enough. We'll get to ask Joe Lunardi later on in our show, which is going to be great.
Yeah, Oscar Tshiebwe and Jacob Toppin both finished with double-doubles. For Oscar, it was 19 points, 15 rebounds, while Toppin added 21 and 11 boards. So huge games from both of them.
Massive games, and that's going to be a team that I think can certainly make some runs in the NCAA tournament. I think they're going to be a popular pick also
for sure.
In the bracket.
So crazy, too, because at the beginning of the season, we were like, what the heck is this team
We're like,
doing?
they're not making the NCAA tournament.
What's wrong with the Blue Bloods? Right. They're not doing anything. And then here we are. Speaking of Blue Bloods, let's talk about the one that beat my Miami Hurricanes in Duke. And they're matching up against Virginia in the ACC Championship. Now, Duke has clinched its 35th all-time appearance in the championship game, which actually ties UNC for most in ACC history. So they're doing, what Blue Bloods do.
They certainly are. The dynamic of this game last night changed when Norchad Omier went down in the first minute of the game, right? Because 14 points per game, 10 rebounds a game for Omier this year. That's a big, big loss. Fortunately, it seemed that there were no broken bones, which is great news for Miami. But Kyle Filipowski, 17-11, he changes the dynamic of the game. 15th double-double to lead, all Division I freshmen in that category. But this was a matchup from the get-go that was kind of between Miami's speed and Duke's size.
Yeah.
And without Omier in that game, Miami was able to stay tough in the first half, but Duke's size really presented some challenges in the second.
SMH, it was a tough one for us Hurricanes fans. All right, let's go over to the SEC and talk about Missouri, who upset Tennessee 79-71 the final in that one. What did you see out of this team?
Well, they shot the ball really well. This is one of the more exhausting teams to play in all of college basketball for a number of reasons. Lead the SEC in steals. They run in transition. They take a ton of threes. And soon after this game, Christine, it was announced that head coach Dennis Gates signed a 6-year extension to stay in Columbia, Missouri. And this was really important for Missouri fans and Missouri as a school because his name was brought up in a lot of open head coaching positions. So it's great to see Dennis in there. And I think it's like a $25 million buyout. So that's kind of silly. I don't think he's going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Why would you? I mean, that would be amazing, though. I always get fascinated by buyouts because that's a lot of money to just leave and do. You can just do nothing for a little bit if you wanted to. Okay, let's go over to Merrimack College because they won the conference title, but no NCAA tournament. It sucks because they just moved up to D1 4 years ago, so they have to wait a little bit longer.
So here's the deal with this, right? I mean, the NCAA implemented the 4-year transition period, so you have to wait 4 years until you're eligible. They are in their last year right now of that transition period. This is a team that won the NEC regular season title in 2019-2020. But yes, it's just kind of silly. I understand, by the way, the principle where the majority of teams do struggle when they come up to the Division I level from Division II. The problem is I don't know why you should be punished for succeeding.
For it, right? Like it's like if you do well, No, we have to wait a little bit.
I have not heard a great argument for that side.
I feel like maybe, because I'm thinking about it, maybe they don't want, but no, it doesn't make sense, because I was going to say maybe they don't want teams going into the NCAA tournament and then just getting beaten in the first round. But if you're winning your conference, then you obviously are a team that can compete at that level.
Right, and there's a ton of teams that do win their conference championships and then do get beaten. Right. And they've been Division I teams for 50 years.
Who cares if you lose in the first round? That doesn't make any sense. You're right. You shouldn't be punished for that. It doesn't make any sense.
Somebody answer that question for us.
We need to know. Okay, let's take a quick look at some of the games that finished today, some matchups that we saw today. This one,
shocking.
Insane.
I
mean,
Jalen Wilson,
beat down.
He had 24 points, though. There's nobody else really helped him. They turned the ball over 16 times. That was a problem. Dylan Nasu played out of his mind today. 3 players in double figures for Texas. But this is shocking, and I want to ask Joe how this affects Kansas, by the way. I don't know if it necessarily knocks them off the one line, because a lot of people had them as a number 1 overall seed in the upcoming tournament. But this has to do something.
Oh, that's insane. All right, no surprise here, right?
Yep.
Alabama winning this one against Missouri.
No surprise here. Brandon Miller, of course, another double-double, just another day at the office. Noah Clowney made a couple of really big threes at some key moments. Missouri just really struggled from beyond the arc today. Demoy Hodge has been terrific as well all season long.
All right, Purdue, who has been at the top of the charts pretty much all season. No surprise that they beat Ohio State at all.
I don't think so. Ohio State, to their credit, got to this point, which I don't think many people expected them. They were without Bryce Sensabaugh for the second straight game. He is now out for the season. They just couldn't have anybody with the size to guard Edey.
Another team at the top of the charts, Houston, doing their thing, of course, like they should in the AAC.
The biggest story, I think, out of this game, again, is what is going to be Marcus Sasser's, deal. Is he going to be able to play tomorrow? Because I wonder if Houston ends up losing to maybe another team, whether it's Memphis, does that knock them off the one line?
Yeah, that would make sense. All right, let's take a look at Vandy taking on Texas A&M. And no surprise here that A&M won this one.
Great run for Vanderbilt, and I just don't know. It might be a little bit too little too late. I think this was a win and in situation. If Vanderbilt won this game, they would be in. Just kind of ran out of steam. Texas A&M may have played their best game of the season today.
And we talked about this one. Penn State taking down Indiana in an upset in the Big Ten tournament.
Jalen Pickett, just a walking bucket, 28 points. He can shoot from anywhere. Seth Lundy, a really good game today. Trace Jackson Davis just didn't have enough help outside of his own game.
Let's take a look at some players who we will feel like will be worth a watch in this year's upcoming NCAA tournament, presented by Principal. Me and Sam are going to choose 5 players that we think are going to be worth a watch in no particular order. That is the asterisk and the key, so don't at me or him. Thank you very much.
You can at me. That's okay.
Don't at me. I'm not in the mood. Okay. Sam, let's start with number 1, who we feel will be worth a watch this NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the guy who's right under number 1 right now, and that's Marcus Sasser. So we can elevate him to the 1 spot. AAC Player of the Year this year. He's going to be in the mix for a top 5 draft pick this year. And remember, Sasser met with NBA teams last year and then decided to run it back with the Cougars this year. You see the injury there, and that's a problem. Happened in the AAC semifinal game earlier today. Did not return. Happened early in the game. We're told it's a groin injury, and a lot of the success for Houston obviously depends upon the health of Marcus Sasser. This is a destiny pick for me. I think the Final Four in Houston, having Marcus Sasser healthy, this is a Final Four team, and they could, at the end of the season, cut down the nets.
So Houston beat Cincy in that game, 69-48, where he got that groin strain. So we'll see how that affects him going into March Madness. All right, number 2, who do we got for that?
I think we'll go Jaime Jaquez Jr.
Love that.
Going from left to right here, although we will change. A lot of great players up here. Jaime Jaquez Jr., I feel like, and it's a detriment on us, we didn't talk about him enough this year.
With that.
Right, Christine?
Yes.
Part of this is because, yes, he plays out west and the games are late, but Jaime Jaquez Jr., Pac-12 Player of the Year, he became the first UCLA player to win this award since who? Kevin Love. Back in 2008, freshman won it for UCLA. Averaging 22 points per game over the last 9. Without Jalen Clark, who's been one of the best defenders all year, they will be without him for a while, at least the NCAA tournament. a lot of the onus falls upon Jaime Jaquez Jr., so he's going to have to step up big time in the NCAA tournament.
I love this note about Jaime. By the way, I haven't told you guys this. I met him at the ESPYs 2 years ago also. He doesn't follow me on Instagram, so we're not necessarily friends, but we did have a moment of friendship. Okay, so he has an NIL deal with Tricolor Holdings, which is a company in Dallas that helps Latino immigrants purchase and finance cars. So not only is he doing great things on the court, but also off the court, which, of course, we love to see.
Yes, we do.
All right, number 3, who you got?
Number 3, let's go Jalen Wilson. I think without Jalen Wilson on this Kansas team,
yes,
this is a whole different ball game here, right? 20 points per game, 8.5 rebounds a game. No surprise, Big 12 Player of the Year this year, unanimous All-American. He's 28th on the all-time scoring list at Kansas. 2 30-point performances, 18 games with 20 or more points this year. The question for Kansas has been their depth. Jalen Wilson has kind of erased some of those question marks because he can play 40 minutes a game and he can go out and get you a bucket. That's what he is. He's much improved on the defensive end as well. So I think Jalen Wilson is certainly worth the watch. Big
12 Player of the Year, as you mentioned, he leads the Big 12 in scoring and rebounding. And we've talked about how this is the best conference in the entire country. So he's the best player in the best conference. So he's got to be on this list.
Easy pick.
We have number 4.
Easy pick here as well with Drew Timme, right? Friend of the show. Friend of the show. We always say that with Drew Timme. He announced earlier this year, maybe a week ago, that he was not going to be returning to Gonzaga, even though he had another year of eligibility. Some might thought he might use that for the NIL possibilities that would be there. Big hat tip to Matt Norlander over at CBS, who wrote a tremendous piece about Drew Timme and some of the tidbits and stories that have come across playing with Drew Timme. Corey Kispert had a couple of great quotes in there. He's just kind of the epitome of what it means to be a player for Gonzaga. It takes a very specific kind of personality to be successful under Mark Few's program and play all the way out there. He has done that, now the all-time leading scorer at
that's
Gonzaga.
What I was about to say. He scored 18 points to get there, and that was huge, obviously, for him because Timme has been there, it feels like forever, but big buckets out there at Gonzaga. All right, number 5, our last one. Who do we have?
The big man, Zach Edey.
True friend of the show. An actual
true friend of the show. Came on, joined us earlier. I think that was our first show of the year, wasn't it?
Yes, it started off with a bang.
Big thank you to Zach Edey for joining, but it's hard not to watch. It's hard to miss 7-4 on the court. Never mind hard not to watch, right? 32 points today in their semifinal game. 6th 30th point performance of the year. And I want to give Zach Edey some credit, too, because Purdue struggled down the stretch of this season. We give him a lot of credit for what he does on the court, and rightfully so. What he does as a leader for this team, I think, is understated. I mean, there's a lot of freshmen on this team that they rely upon heavily. With Zach Edey on the floor, he not only plays extremely well, he's also an underrated leader for this team.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. So happy that we had him in our first show of the season. We learned a lot about him. Do we want to give a shout out to anybody else that could possibly have been on this list?
I mean, Armando Bacot's on the list. It's so sad what happened to UNC this year. Not going to make the tournament. Armando Bacot did a phenomenal job handling all of the pressure. He was always there when questions weren't answered, needed to be answered for UNC. He was up there answering those tough questions. So a hat tip to Armando Bacot.
All right, I like that shout out. Let's go back to Zach Edey because we learned a lot about him, as I mentioned earlier in the season. One of the things that we learned is that Zach Edey didn't start playing basketball until he was in 10th grade. That's insane. Take a look at this.
2 more for Zach Edey.
Sometimes you get guys that have size, and they're good players, but
big fella going to work tonight.
Their only strength is their size.
He's the most unique player in college basketball.
He's learned to pass the basketball.
Outstanding ball movement.
He's learned to play without fouling. He's improved in ball screen defense. He's one of the best rebounders in the country. He's one of the best scorers in the country.
32 points for the big fella.
There are 26 official NCAA basketball stat categories. Purdue center Zach Edey is ranked in the top 20 of nearly half of them.
Yep. Zach knows basketball.
Oh, he's a good player, man. We're glad he's 7'4". But, there's a basketball player inside there.
Edey took his time when it came to basketball. He didn't start playing hoops until the 10th grade.
It's really simple. It's kind of petty, but I just didn't want to play basketball because people wanted me to play basketball. I kind of felt like sports was something that you should choose. Sports was something that you should love and you should grow into.
Instead, Edey molded his basketball game from other games of his youth.
Zach knows hockey.
Zach knows baseball.
Zach
I think guys that play a lot of different sports, I think it helps them. I think the element of just, being aggressive and embracing, physical contact, obviously hockey would really resonate in that area.
So I'm from Toronto. I played hockey ever since I was 6 years old, all the way up until I started high school, because that's kind of what Canadians do. You always see those hockey players, they have like the big legs, big quads. I think that was something that's really translated for me. I'm hard to move because of those big legs I got from hockey.
Sometimes you get guys with that strong upper body, and then you have the bird legs or vice versa. He was well proportioned, he could move, he had that mobility. And then when you saw the way he was bending while he was pitching, I was like, man, he's not a bad athlete.
I played baseball until halfway through my 10th grade year. In baseball, when you're pitching, obviously, the last two fingers that you touch the ball with are like these two. You hold it like that, you throw it like that. And then in basketball, when you're shooting, you're always taught it's the same thing. Like, the last two fingers touch the ball. Once someone told me that, yeah, like these are the last two fingers that should touch the ball.
Now a touch for Edie, and it goes.
It kind of helps you stay consistent and like stay through the ball, and then also get that nice backspin.
Even on summer vacations, Edie was unknowingly cross-training.
8th or 9th grade, me and some of my friends, they all played volleyball, we all played on the beach. I think blocking shots, definitely something to translate from volleyball to basketball. I'll make sure to go straight up my block shots, not reach down. I think I've really worked on that through 3 years of playing college basketball, of just being able to play like that without fouling.
It's like running into a 12-story building.
I think the sport kind of came to me eventually naturally, but I'm very grateful I was never forced into it.
Anytime you put somebody like Zach out there with guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot, and a team that's drastically improved on the defensive end, I think we can make a long run in March.
I love that he said he was petty on a few of those. Oh, look at this. We got Joey Buckets in the building, which, by the way, just a peek behind the curtains, he's just down the hall, so we're, like, very close to him.
And he's still smiling.
So excited. I know, right? Just been there all day, holding it down, helping everybody out when it comes to the bracket. So excited that you get to join us today. I want to ask you a question, because we're going to play something called Lucky or Unlucky. So St. Patrick's Day is next Friday, but in Connecticut, they're celebrating it today. Is that weird? Did you know that?
I did not know that, and I'm really glad you didn't tell me, because I really have no time to go out tonight anyway.
I know, because you're hard at work per usual. Okay, so in the spirit of the Irish holiday, as I said, we're going to play a game of Lucky or Unlucky. We're going to give you some bubble teams and ask you whether or not these teams are going to be lucky or unlucky when it comes to Selection Sunday. And we start with Vanderbilt. Are they going to be lucky or unlucky?
I think the Commodores are going to be unlucky and miss the tournament. Christine, I agree with what Sam said earlier. I think today was a play-in situation, and the Commodores just ran out of gas in this SEC semifinal.
Joe, let me ask you this, too. The early season losses, Temple, Loyola Chicago, who is not the Loyola Chicago that many people remember them to be, and SMU. I mean, how big of a hurdle were those three losses to jump over for Jerry Stackhouse?
I wouldn't point at any one of those games specifically, but in the aggregate, they contribute to Vanderbilt having a net ranking where the first number is an 8. And there's never been an at-large team in that neighborhood, and I don't think there will be tomorrow. Okay, so I went to University of Miami for undergrad. But I did go to this school for grad school, so I want you to be very careful when you tell me what you think about Clemson and whether or not you think they're going to be lucky or unlucky. Yeah, it's just a phenomenal graduate school, a phenomenal environment, really excellent.
He's letting you down easy.
And if they make the tournament, they will have the worst non-conference schedule ranking in the history of at-large bids. Ergo, I am not going to buck 27 years of history doing this with the committee essentially disqualifying bubble teams that played a weak non-conference schedule, which is really unfortunate given how well Clemson has looked and how well they've played. But the committee over the years, Christine, has really wanted to make sure and reinforce the message that you can't skate that way into the big dance.
That makes sense.
57 in the net 7 and 6 in the first 2 quadrants. I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting case, Joe, because they did start out. They started out ACC play really strong too.
Sure.
Well, you know what they have in common with Vanderbilt, who we just talked about? Both teams lost to Loyola Chicago, which finished last in their first season in the Atlantic 10.
All right, let's move over to the best conference in college basketball. And when you look at these teams top to bottom, it's tough because all these teams play each other multiple times a season. Oklahoma State, do you think they're going to be lucky or unlucky?
I think they're going to be unlucky by just a sliver. They're going to wake up as team number 69 on our board, maybe team number 70, depending on what happens in the Conference USA Championship game. 18 and 15, some great wins, 5 quad 1 wins, which is a great thing to hang your hat on. But then you look at 11 losses in quad 1 and you go, not a good ratio.
Yeah, I agree. I also agree with Joe there too, and Mike Boynton's done a great job this year. Oklahoma State, at one point was kind of right there in the hunt for, in the Big 12. It just didn't really pan out that way. Joe, I want to ask you about Wisconsin too, because this is another kind of interesting one. I imagine that the first round loss to Ohio State doesn't really help them, but how much does it make them unlucky, if at all?
I think they used up all their luck prior to the Big Ten tournament. And then it all came back to bite them against Ohio State. And Ohio State was an interesting case because they maintained great metrics all year long, all the way through today's elimination. But when you lose to a team in the first round of the conference tournament that was 5 and 15, 5 and 15 in league play, and you're on the bubble, that's usually a bad combination.
All right, let's go over to another ACC team, this one, Pittsburgh. What do you think about Pitt?
Well, I got married in Pittsburgh, Christine, which isn't the same as going to graduate school at Clemson, I suppose. But I'm going to say lucky. Lucky for Pittsburgh. Their resume is a little bit sketchy, but they have some great wins, and they have 8 true road wins, which is best of all the bubble teams this year.
Yeah, I'm with Joe here as well. Jeff Capel, I think, hasn't gotten enough credit for what he's done at Pitt. I remember doing the Backyard Brawl a couple years ago, calling that game and getting to walk around with Jeff and just hearing his vision. I mean, this is a Pitt team. If what Joe's saying is correct, they're going to be back in the NCAA tournament for the first time since Jamie Dixon was the head coach back in 15-16.
A minute ago, yeah, for sure. All right, let's do another ACC school, NC State. What do we think about them?
Yeah, they're with Pitt. I mean, you could throw a blanket over these 3 ACC teams that we talked about, NC State, Pitt, and Clemson. I do think NC State not only will just sneak in, but because of Jerquavian Smith, they're going to have the best player in their opening game, whether it's in Dayton in the first 4 or maybe in like a 6-11, 5-12 kind of matchup. They strike me as the kind of double-digit seed that could do some damage.
There's a couple of teams this year, Joe, that have kind of had roller coaster seasons. Mississippi State has been kind of one of those teams that's difficult to figure out kind of the entire year. Where do you side on them as far as the unlucky or lucky goes here?
I think they'll make it, so lucky. But I don't think they'll win. This is a team that has trouble scoring at times, more than times. And, they won the game they had to win over Florida to get themselves into the tournament. It's been a quick turnaround for Chris Jans taking over for Ben Howland. But I do not see the Bulldogs sticking in this tournament, although I think they'll make it.
I got a couple more for you, Joe, at least one more. When you look at what happened to Kansas just moments ago, losing by 20 to Texas, Marcus Carr went out with an injury earlier today, so I don't know what happens tomorrow. Is there a potential for either of those teams to get knocked off the one line, or is at least Kansas certainly safe?
Marcus Sasser,
excuse me.
Of Houston. I don't think Texas does what it did tonight without Marcus Carr. For me, Kansas is number 1 overall, even if they didn't make a basket tonight.
Wow.
Their resume is just too overwhelming. Will it surprise me if Alabama wins the SEC tournament and the committee slips them ahead? That won't surprise me. I see how you could make that evaluation. Procedurally, I can't remember a time that the committee has factored in these very late games in the process to enough of a degree to make that change. And for all the talk we're going to expend on it in the next 20 hours or so, it's a distinction really without a difference, because Kansas is going to go Des Moines. Kansas City is the #1 seed in the Midwest. Alabama is going to go Birmingham, Louisville as the #1 seed in the South. So whether Kansas is 1 overall or Alabama is 1 overall and the other is 2, it isn't going to affect their path at all.
That makes sense. Finally, just one more question for you. What time did you wake up this morning, and what time do you go to bed?
Geez, I woke up about 6:45, I guess, and I will probably go to bed tonight about an hour after the last game, whenever that is.
He sleeps here, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have to say, since this is a free-flowing kind of discussion.
Yeah.
Whoever decided, and I blame Copernicus, whoever decided that this was the night of the year to lose an hour of sleep is really not high on my list. So I am officially declaring Copernicus first 4 out.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I like that too. Hopefully this is the last year that we have to do this, right? I feel like that's a thing that's happening.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Every
I don't know
year.
how it works. Every year we're always like,
year.
It's the last year that we're not going to swing for it anymore, but hopefully it actually happens this year. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, let's take a look at some games currently in progress. We got the Mountain West Championship, Utah State taking on San Diego State. 20th in the country. It's currently up by 3 in this matchup.
Mountain West has been really good this year, I'll tell you that.
All right, Big East final.
Yeah.
Marquette and Xavier. I mean, I don't think people expected Marquette to run away with the Big East Championship. Are you at all surprised that they're leading by this much in this matchup?
First off, before we get to this one again, Marquette was the underdog yesterday against UConn by 4 points.
Right.
And then they won that game. They played like a Final Four team here today. It was impressive to watch.
And of course, that Kansas-Texas matchup, just getting blown out by 20 points. It makes no sense.
You asked me a great question too before we got on the show. Who's going to win the national championship?
Yeah.
It's a question everybody's asking, but that gives me pause. That game right there, watching them lose to Texas by 20, gives me, and I think a lot of people, we're going to be picking a bracket. Pause.
Literally, when I saw that score, I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
I feel like we talked about how there was so much parity in this college football or college basketball season, and we liked that, but we always said there's a lot of parity. However, we know that Kansas is going to be at the top for sure.
It's funny how we love chaos, but we also want to have order.
Chaos. Exactly.
Right?
But then I feel like at the end of the day, I feel like we always say that there is parity, but things do become a little bit more predictable once things get down to the wire. Okay, as we know, we have an ACC championship coming up here very shortly with number 21 Duke taking on number 13 Virginia. So let's talk about it a little bit. Is this because, Miami versus Duke yesterday, and then we have Duke taking on Virginia. Do you feel like Duke is on a revenge tour, just taking down the teams that they lost to earlier in the season?
It certainly may seem like that. You go back to by the way, that was the last time that Duke lost was to Virginia. 8-game winning streak, right? So the last time they lost was in Charlottesville. The biggest question, the controversy, was Filipowski fouled? They didn't call a 5-second violation on Duke on the inbounds there, so you can kind of erase those two. But it's always great when you can play with a chip on your shoulder, right? And Duke's been able to do that, I think, for a lot of reasons this year. They've been counted out for a lot of the season. A couple of questionable losses in there. When you have such a young team, there are so many question marks, too, playing in this time of year.
Yeah.
Duke is a very young team that they rely on a lot of freshmen. Derek Whitehead, Derek Lively. I mean, do these guys show up? They have showed up. 70 of their 85 points in the game yesterday were scored by freshmen. So, I mean, that's how Duke, wins games. Can those guys play well?
I want to talk about Virginia, because I was thinking about it today, and we haven't really talked that much about Virginia. We talked last time that we had a show on Countdown to Game Day last week. We talked about how we kind of haven't talked about Duke that much and playing well, even though they were going on this win streak and playing well towards the end of the season, because we kind of shied them away when it came to Blue Bloods in the ACC. But when you think about Virginia, I feel like we haven't really talked about them much since they won the last championship in 2019, which wasn't that long ago. Obviously, we had a pandemic, things got weird, and then we just forgot about Virginia basketball. Should we be talking about them more?
Absolutely. It's a good question.
What happened?
Yeah, no, and I think Virginia maybe gets dinged a little bit because they're not like the most exciting team to watch play. They just are one of the most mentally exhausting teams to play. They run their offense using all of the shot clock, and then they'll make the shot every time with 2 seconds left. I think Jay Bilas said this on the game last night. Their defense is their offense, and their offense is their defense. Meaning, they make you work for all 30 seconds on both ends of the floor. Kihei Clark is just tremendous, a leader that you want on your team. Jaden Gardner played out of his mind yesterday as well. This is a Virginia team that I think a lot of people are going to like in the NCAA tournament. What do they always say? Defense travels, Christine. Defense travels. We'll see if it travels.
All right, they're seeking their 4th ACC Championship title. Who you got?
I'm going to go Duke.
Okay. I think I'm going to go Virginia.
Just for the heck of it?
Just because Duke beat Miami and I'm annoyed, okay? I don't like it. Thanks, guys, for watching Champ Week Live, presented by Principal. Go on and watch the game. And we'll see you guys next time.